Alright, we finally made it to Park 7, Uyghur World.
I mean, this is pretty and all, but I'm not sure if it's worth $45,000 a day.
I wish Sweet Robin could be with us.
You shot him in the face, remember?
Oh yeah, but that was totally necessary.
Was it?
Absolutely, I needed to, And so we open episode 2 with Dolores and Arnold outside the park.
And so I guess we have a bunch of retconning going on.
Retconning? What do you mean?
Well, in the first season, we get a pretty good idea when everything is happening. We have the contemporary events with the Man in Black and his search for the maze, Maeve's escape, and Dolores' revolution. Then, based on the Man in Black's comments about how long he's been coming to the park, we have a second timeline with William and Logan's visit to the park taking place 30 years ago. Then, based on Dolores' comments on the last time we saw Arnold, 34 years, 42 days ago, we have the time of Arnold's death and the events of Escalante, with Arnold's interviews happening sometime before this. And we know based on Ford's comments, research began 3 years before the park opened, which was shortly after Arnold died. So that means research and development began about 37 years before the contemporary events.
Yeah, I know all this, so what?
Well, we know that it took a year for the hosts to pass the Turing test. That is a test on whether AI is distinguishable from humans. In fact, the demonstration for Logan later in the episode is a Turing test in itself. So it seems this scene takes place 36 years ago. And yet here, 36 years ago, we find out Arnold's son Charlie is alive. And therein lies the problem. Arnold has no motivation for what he's doing. Ford specifically said that it was tragedy, presumably the death of his son Charlie, that caused Arnold to delve into his search for consciousness. Ford says that he looked to the hosts for something that wasn't there. But here Charlie is alive, and Arnold is already looking for consciousness in Dolores.
Well, maybe the tragedy is Charlie's getting sick and he's not dead yet.
His kid gets sick and he spends all his time diddling with robots and not with his dying son? You're just making Arnold into an extreme asshole.
Well, yeah, Arnold is already an asshole. What kind of person goes into the business of making sex bots, then works religiously to make them conscious, and then gets upset when they're being used as sex bots? I mean, that's what they were designed for in the first place. I mean, geez, even in this scene, he doesn't want Dolores to be used as a sex bot, even though that's what she's specifically designed for. I mean, seriously, it's like going into the business of building toilets and then designing a toilet to have taste buds and then getting so upset about the whole twisted predicament that you kill yourself. I mean, just don't design toilets with taste buds. How hard is that? Then you don't have to kill yourself. Anyway, we find out that Arnold lives in some Asian city, and his house is filled with a bunch of crosses. Jesus reference 1. Then jump to the just after the incident timeline where we find out it's been 13 hours since their shift change. The fleeing board member who is with Bernard enters and lets everyone know that there's been a revolt, and Dolores then follows him in and takes over.
Wait, so there's no alarm here? And they've been working 13 hours and no one bothered to call and ask about it? I again have no idea how this organization functions. But I'm also really confused about the timeline here. Bernard and this dude were hiding in the dark and needed to head 2 miles northeast. But they ended up walking for hours, as shown with the daylight, and now this guy has finally made it to the outpost. I guess Bernard told him exactly where it was. Now, if these guys have been working for 13 hours, that means at latest, it's noon. And that's being pretty generous. It's assuming that Ford was shot at 11 p.m. and their shift started right before that. So if it's noon, that means Dolores has had quite a morning. She murdered some guests on a double date with Teddy. She captured some other ones and host-splained to them. She ordered Angela to set up a decoy buggy to find an outpost, and then had Angela come and find her when they did. And of course, she watched the sunset with Teddy. That's right, she watched the fucking sunset before noon.
How do you know it's not the sunrise?
Fuck you, Chad. They weren't riding down guests in the dark. Meanwhile, this asshole takes half a day to go 2 miles. I also have no idea what crazy scenario led to Dolores coming in right after this jack-off. Angela let him go, presumably right in front of the outpost. Then she rides off to fetch Dolores, and somehow Dolores arrives just after this guy. Does Westworld have Littlefinger jetpacks?
Anyway, we go back to 36 years ago and find Logan hitting on a dude. It seems awfully important to the plot that Logan is bisexual considering how much the writers bring it up. Anyway, we also find out that William dated Juliet for at least 6 years before putting a ring on it. And then Akecheta and Angela show up to show Logan the Turing test. As an Easter egg, Major Craddock is in the crowd.
So one thing that bugs me about this test is that the people have reveries. I mean, clearly this guy wiping his glasses is a reference to those ticks. But Arnold's Reverie update, not to be confused with Ford's Reverie update, is supposed to be what made Dolores finally solve the maze, so it must be close to Arnold's suicide. But this scene happens 2 years before that.
Dude, that's what makes it a Reverie update. This is Reverie 1.0. Anyway, Logan is tickled pink by the demonstration, and the scene ends with some group sex and another reminder that Logan is bisexual. Dolores watches it all and seems shocked that Angela put the straps of her bra on last. Angela was programmed by 2 men, so she might not know any better. We then get back to Teddy, who finds out again that he's been dying over and over again. He asks why, and the best the worker can say is for fun.
We then make it to Lawrence, and in a bit of continuity porn, Lawrence has been captured by the Pardue brothers. The murder of the Pardue brothers is actually what Lawrence is being executed for first season when the Man in Black saves him then. Apparently after the incident, Lawrence left the party and went right back into his loop rather than revolt. We then see a man in his 60s who had one arm dislocated and the other arm shot just yesterday, fend off a man, and punch through a wall. After finding a medkit, he begins to gratuitously exposit to Lawrence about why the park was created without actually revealing any specifics. It's all about avoiding divine judgment and tallying of sins, so that's Jesus reference too.
We then get back to Dolores, who is torturing a dude to find out 800 men are coming, and then she weirdly enslaves a black guy and orders him to revive Confederates. By the way, the raising of the dead makes Jesus reference 3.
We then jump back in time to soon after Logan and William's trip to the park 30 years ago, where we see Armistice as a deputy sheriff. Somehow William never met her. And we meet James Delos, because who better to play the father of a 6'1" American Logan than a 5'8" Scotsman? The resemblance is uncanny. And yes, with a Greek name like Delos, I would expect a Scotsman. Anyway, William essentially tells James that the park is a great opportunity to make P-tapes on people.
And then Dolores and Maeve run into each other, and the tension is thick. These two are definitely gonna rumble later on, and it's gonna be awesome! It's Judas Steer Bowl. Get hype!
Dolores then finds the Confederados, who are eating like it's the Last Supper, Jesus reference 4. Dolores then tells them they are heading for glory and death, invoking the battle hymn of the Republic, Jesus reference 5. Major Craddock then says he only follows Colonel Brigham of the New Southern Cross, Jesus reference 6, and he follows the Almighty, Jesus reference 7. Dolores then kills and resurrects Craddock, Jesus reference 8, and tells him that she killed God, Jesus reference 9. And then we go back maybe 24 years. I'm basing this on William's daughter's age. Here we see both Armistice and Dolores working a party. Again, William somehow never met Armistice. We get to meet William's daughter Emily and his wife Juliet, played by the 5'10" Claire Unabia. Another dead ringer for her father. Interesting story, the actress simply posed for the stock photo that was used in the first season and didn't know her image was going to be used. The show got her to reprise the role after the fact. Anyway, a clearly ailing James Delos reveals that he's retiring. Maybe. He also says that maybe he won't have to. I guess either Delos has some life-saving technology, or they're able to build host bodies for people, or maybe they're just building host clones and telling people they are healed people. Who knows? It seems to have something to do with the extension of life, or promising the extension of life, as we later find broken and drug-using Logan saying that it's the end of humanity. He hopes that their forever is blissfully short.
The Man in Black then makes it to Pariah so we can have a Gus cameo, and then the Man in Black wants an army, but everyone commits suicide. So this was all a big waste of time.
And we close the episode with William at some point in time explaining his plans to Dolores for no reason in a mwahahaha supervillain manner. I guess he's constructing the Valley Beyond or something. Even Dolores calls William foolish and refers to the Valley as a weapon.
We then have our third episode, which opens in Rosworld, where we meet some mysterious new characters with mysterious backstories who are kept apart for mysterious reasons and have this mysterious map.
I would say this is the Man in Black's daughter, but it would seem completely insane for the Man in Black's daughter to frequent a park that she somewhat blames for the death of her mother. So yeah, the Man in Black's daughter is a solid possibility.
So the woman meets this other VIP and they hit it off, and she shoots him to ensure he isn't a host, and things are going awesome, and they go tiger hunting together, but then the hosts rebel and say these violent delights have violent ends.
Wait, so the hosts in Rajworld rebel now, in the middle of the day? Because the incident was at night in Westworld. They don't have any alarms or mechanisms to warn the other parks. Imagine if there was a mass shooting at Epcot Center. You think the Magic Kingdom would just keep chugging along like nothing was wrong? Man, this organization is the worst. Also, I see no reason why anyone, host or human, would be saying these violent delights have violent ends. That line made no sense in Westworld last season and makes even less sense here. Did a picture of Juliet float into the park randomly? Did Abernathy whisper in this dude's ear? Did Arnold program this dude to shoot him in the head? Whatever, the woman runs away and this tiger follows her into the other park, and I guess we find out where the dead tiger came from. One mystery solved with only a half dozen new ones created. We then jump to Bernard 2 weeks after the incident, where I guess he explained to Strand off screen about how he killed all of those hosts, because it would be really weird if he said, I killed them, and then Strand said, okie dokie, and didn't follow up on that. It's weird enough that Bernard has been traveling all over with this group and hasn't yet explained how he got on that beach.
The group then makes it back to Mesa Hub, and they enter Basement 83 like a bunch of badasses, where they find Charlotte. The basement has a bunch of bodies in it for some reason, another mystery, and Charlotte still hasn't found Abernathy.
We then flash back to perhaps a couple days after the incident with Bernard and Charlotte's quest for Abernathy. By the way, not to be pedantic, but I just want to remind everyone that this is actually currently Peter Abernathy, while this is a decommissioned host who has been given a new identity by Lee, though I'm fairly certain no one will address this fact. We should also note that Bernard seems to have changed his clothes at the outpost. This is what he was wearing before, and the outfit he chooses to walk around Westworld in? A fucking 3-piece suit with dress shoes. What an idiot.
So Bernard and Charlotte have found Abernathy, but he's been captured by Rebus. So they draw Rebus away and then attack him, and Bernard reprograms him, turning his aggression down and his integrity up. This makes him want to protect the women and explains why he was acting so strange on the beach. And with his new personality, he goes and attacks his friends.
Wait, so with his aggression level all the way down, he immediately guns down all of his friends? What the hell is a regular aggression level? Whatever the case, Charlotte and Bernard successfully retrieve Abernathy, but the sight of Confederados makes him want to sing like a madman for no reason at all. The tune is naturally the Battle Hymn of the Republic, Jesus reference 10. Charlotte pieces out, and Bernard and Abernathy are captured.
We then get to Dolores, who's trying to convince the Confederados to team up with her and fight the incoming QA security force. The Confederados want proof that a force is coming, and Dolores shows him a gun, which I guess proves that they're coming? Whatever the case, the Confederados agree to team up in exchange for keeping some weapons. We then get to Maeve, Hector, and Lee, who are ambushed by some of Ghost Nation, and they want Lee for some reason. Theory, Elsie is alive and has reprogrammed Ghost Nation to rescue humans. Maeve tries her Jedi mind trick, but Ghost Nation isn't weak-minded, and so they run away across what looks to be the same field where Dolores mowed down guests.
The crew makes it to an elevator, leaving Ghost Nation behind, which makes me wonder how the fuck Dolores got into that outpost last episode.
We then get back to Bernard and Abernathy, who have arrived at Dolores' camp. Dolores is shocked to see her father, but saddened that he's now insane. She then tells Teddy that he's all she has left. You know, except for the current Peter Abernathy and all the Peter Abernathys that were Abernathy before, and, I don't know, her mom.
Dolores then goes in to talk to her dad, and they reminisce about the ranch and their experiences together, as if it was a long time ago instead of, 2 weeks ago. She asks if he remembers sitting on the porch and asking about her painting, which is all he ever did.
We then get back to Maeve, Hector, and Lee is pretty upset that Maeve and Hector are like an item. I guess these are the things you worry about after witnessing the murder of hundreds.
We then get back to Dolores, who says it's been a long time since she and Bernard talked. It's been 2 days. Of course, maybe she's talking about them talking one-on-one, which has never happened. Whatever the case, she asks Bernard to help her dad. We then run into Maeve, who has, randomly run into the only 3 characters in the world who are aligned with her. This is beyond convenient. They all happen to find each other despite being in completely different parts of the Mesa when the incident happened. Felix was in the elevator, Sylvester was down in livestock, and Armistice was fighting forces near Shogun World. I'm certain the show will explain how these 3 found each other, how Armistice got a hand, why she decided to keep Felix and Sylvester alive, why she changed their clothes, and why they're in this random access tunnel. I'm certain they wouldn't leave us hanging like that.
Meanwhile, back with Bernard, he finds that Abernathy has a huge file inside him, but it's got a massively complex encryption. As an Easter egg, we actually get to see Abernathy's other builds, including the Professor, the Sheriff, and the Passenger.
Well, if Maeve running into Armistice wasn't fortuitous enough, Charlotte happens to run into the QA team that's about to attack the fortress that Abernathy happens to be at. Man, these characters happen to be lucky. And speaking of lucky, Even though Bernard just said that the encryption was super complicated, somehow just pressing the same button over and over bypasses the encryption, and Bernard is able to access the file. And then we have the Battle of the Morons. So many questions.
Why are QA forces coming straight in with no strategy?
How did Dolores know they would come in straight in with no strategy?
Where are the rest of QA's men? There are supposed to be 800. That doesn't look like 800. That looks like 30.
Don't modern weapons have a much greater range than 19th century weapons? Seems like QA could just pick everyone off at a distance.
Charlotte's men came in pretty easily through the back door to rescue Abernathy. Why didn't everyone go in the back door?
How did they know Abernathy was in this room?
How did they know Abernathy was in this fortress?
How did they know what Abernathy looked like?
None of the Confederados noticed the masked men retreating? That seems unlikely.
After the door closed, why did all of the Confederados bunch up against the door? Why not try running to the sides or something?
Why did the masked men kill the Confederados when an explosion was about to go off anyway?
Why did the masked men kill the Confederados at all?
The explosion killed all of the QA forces? All 800? That seems unlikely.
QA really sent all of their men in at once? What was Dolores' plan if they didn't send all of their men in at once?
Bernard then tries to escape but is stopped by Zombie Clementine. Honestly, I would totally bang Zombie Clem. She is somehow 10 times hotter than last season. Dolores then orders the execution of Major Craddock, but after Craddock calls Teddy pathetic, Teddy decides to let him go. And Dolores totally allows it. If only these guys had tried that strategy.
We then get back to probably the Man in Black's daughter, who has somehow swum slower than a dead tiger to arrive on shore after it. I'm pretty sure my 4-year-old nephew can swim faster than a dead tiger. In fact, I'm pretty sure anything can swim faster than a dead tiger. Anyway, the probably Man in Black's daughter is then picked up by the probably Elsie-controlled Ghost Nation Human Protection Force.
Theory, they're not controlled by Elsie, they're controlled by Logan. And in our final scene, we get back to Maeve's posse, who is in a snowing part of the park. I'm not sure how that is done. And then they're attacked by a samurai. Totally awesome.